Good evening and a very warm welcome to Japan House London and welcome to our online audiences watching via a live stream on Zoom. My name's Sam Thorne, I'm Director General here, and it's a pleasure to be introducing this evening's panel discussion, Governing in the Age of AI, which I think, given this week's events, couldn't be a more timely conversation. We're very much looking forward to the insights of tonight's panelists. And so pleased to be collaborating with Tony Blair Institute for Global Change on this event. A few words of introduction about Japan House London. We opened back in 2018. Our mission is to present the very best of Japanese cultures here in London. We present exhibitions, regular events such as these, alongside a shop, a library, and a restaurant. In fact, there will be an opportunity to see our current exhibition, Looks Delicious, this evening. It will be open till 8:30, so please do stick around if you haven't seen that exhibition yet. I'm going to hand over now to this evening's chair, Dr. Melanie Garson. Melanie is the Senior Policy Advisor and Cyber and Tech Geopolitics Lead at the Tony Blair Institute for Global Change. Please join me in welcoming Melanie and our panel. Thank you.
Thank you so much, Sam, and thank you very much for everyone here joining us today, and good evening to everyone that's joining us online. Well, what a week it's been in AI. And there could not be more of an opportune time to do a little bit of a deep dive into how we're thinking about AI. And really, AI, as we know, poised to shape economic landscapes, particularly also of Japan and the UK, that have surprising parallels in how they're evolving their approaches towards AI. And, with big announcements like the SoftBank, like Japan AI partnership also having come out this week, alongside the UK AI Opportunities Action Plan, both countries having a commitment to thinking about how you build out AI governance with the Hiroshima Principles and with the AI Safety Institutes, and really both trying to, looking at opportunities, how they can then both leverage these for collaboration and really thinking about how they leverage it between the public and private sectors, which is what we're really going to dig into today. And we're going to think about how both the UK and Japan are leading in these fields of thinking about particularly AI in public services and how they can serve as an example and lead to others. So we have an absolutely extraordinary panel joining us today to do this. And firstly, I'd like to welcome Professor Takahiro Oya, who has joining us all the way from Japan, a very long flight. The Professor of Jurisprudence from Keio University, Faculty of Law in Tokyo, and a visiting professor at Nagoya University, really looks into the philosophical and legal interpretations and the effect of IT on legal and political systems. So huge welcome to Professor Oya. Also welcoming some of our homegrown AI talent. Faculty AI have just celebrated their 10th birthday. So it's really one of the UK's sorts of homegrown AI companies. It's really a pleasure to have Nitra Khan with us, who really is such a dynamic leader in this field and really looking at the commercial and public sector, and looks at how you use your expertise really for tech for good and the use of AI and machine learning to really think of how you deliver social and environmental and business value. So welcome, Nitra. And absolutely last, but not at all least, they're coming all the way from Edinburgh. It can be a challenge to get to from London or coming down to London. Professor Setu Vijayakumar, and really who has spent an extraordinary amount of time in Japan. So really also like 7 years in Japan, really bridging between the two conversations today. And you focus on data-driven machine learning and stochastic optimization techniques, looking at unique challenges related to deploying robotics and autonomous systems. I'm beginning to talk about the embodiment of AI and embodied AI and how that's going to work out. So you have been hugely involved in shaping the UK agenda as your role in program director for robotics and AI at the Alan Turing Institute, which is the UK's premier institute for data science and AI. So welcome, Professor. So I'm going to take the supreme privilege to have some time to really dig down into this topic with our esteemed guests. And then I'm going to have the time to open up to questions from the audience and the audience online who Emma will be helping to take the questions. So please get your questions ready. But to kick us out, I want to ask each of you to think about, we're talking in the conversation about AI and the hype that we've seen over the last few days. Sometimes it gets forgotten as what is the rationale behind, or the principles behind why you would want to use AI in public services and what that can deliver. So I was wondering if I could ask each of you for your thoughts as to, stepping away from the big news, how you look at the approach for bringing AI into public services.
Okay, so for me, the reason we'd like to use AI into the governance is very clear, because our fewer populations. I mean, Japan is facing with aging problem. And in the future, we have smaller and smaller populations. We need efficiency in the government, not only in the private services. But the problem is whether or how far we can use it in the governing process. I'd like to introduce you one news about some weeks ago. In the last year, Japanese tax agency hits the highest record of additional taxation, which arises from taxation investigation. I think it will be the similar process in UK, but every year, every company needs to file the tax report. And in the case the tax agency finds some doubt, they decide to do tax investigation. And they found some problems, mistakes or intentional tax fraud. They cast additional taxation. And I said, the last year, they record high. The reason is they introduced AI to decide to whom they investigate. So they will say that this is just an investigation. They didn't decide anything, right? We call it disposition in technical words. I mean, to cast some obligation or take away some rights. In this case, AI didn't directly do that. They just pointed out fingers to someone. But if pointed, the tax agency came to your office and find all your documents, take away many hours of your time. And it is explained as the decision of AI. So this is a problem. Can we permit this or not? So this is my standpoint over this problem.
You started with everybody's biggest fear, the tax person. The AI tax person sounding worse. Let me come to you. So, well, we've heard a story here, sort of really thinking carefully about how we roll out into AI in public services. How do your faculty really think about this approach? You have a lot of experience working with different parts of government.
So I mean, I have the pleasure of looking after the government and public services work that we do at faculty. And a lot of our work is focused on working with the public sector in the UK. And so there is huge opportunity. You have challenges around aging population. We have challenges around we don't have enough money. We have huge backlogs. Our services are creaking, and AI is absolutely essential for public services to be reformed and be more efficient and be more effective in delivering public services to citizens. So for me, it's an absolute, I mean, it's a no-brainer. We do need AI in our public services. Faculty is a applied AI company, and we're 10 years old. And those two things are really important, because applied is really important because the thing we care about is building AI solution systems that actually get used. We put them in the hands of users. And there you have to think about decision making. You have to think about user needs. You have to think about safety. You have to think about kind of the operational discipline that you're enabling, rather than it being an AI driven decision or it being an analytical thing. It drives decision making, it informs decision makers, but fundamentally it's a human being that makes the decision. And so all of that stuff is very important to the way that we work with our public sector customers. Over the last 10 years, we've helped catch terrorists, we've kept children safe, we've improved productivity and efficiency across the public services, and we've literally just scratched the surface. So there's a lot more value to be had, but we do need to do it safely and make sure that humans are the key decision makers.
Okay, thank you. And then over to you, Professor Sethu. How are you thinking about the principles? I mean, you're really thinking super forward, although it'll come quicker than we think it's going to happen, of the principles of sort of that decision of where we bring something like embodied AI into public services.
Yeah, absolutely. So one of the key areas that, I mean, both of our panelists have already talked about bringing in efficiency, and in many cases, these are about decisions. And now if you take that one step forward and say, can these decisions actually change the state of the world? In other words, can we use these decisions to improve logistics in transport? Can we use these decisions to, say, do urban city planning? Can we do these decisions to kind of route traffic in a different way? So both with my hat on as the program director for embodied AI and human factors at the Alan Turing Institute and doing the basic research at Edinburgh, we do look at things where some of the tangibles that are not very visible to the human eye, some of the network dynamics, some of the things related to pollution, health factors, how poverty comes in to affect living standards. So some of these things, data and machine learning actually gives you insights that is not very obvious from the outset. And that's where I think we would be using AI to add value. And again, I think this sort of theme always goes back to doing it safely, doing it in an explainable fashion, doing it in a transparent fashion. And that is really a big challenge, even from a research perspective, that is even now a big challenge.
Go ahead.
Fundamentally, people often don't even ask for AI to be explainable. They don't ask to understand what its failure mechanisms are. And so as the people consuming the AI or the people who are procuring it or using it, these are fundamental questions that you need to be able to ask. And for the people who are servicing you via AI, for them to be able to answer, why did the model make this decision? How is it explainable? What are the failure mechanisms? How well does it perform? What are the and so as society, we're just not equipped to ask those questions. And I think we need to be able to ask those questions.
So you've really quickly jumped into sort of where I was going to go to next, of thinking about, how well is public services equipped to deal with that. And I think one of the ways that that's quite different between UK and Japan is how structurally the countries or the sort of services are emerged. From your perspective, Professor, how well do you feel that the public sort of institutionally are equipped to try and take on some of these technologies right now?
Okay, and one big structural difference between UK and Japan is, as she said, I mean, the structure of the government. Japan is a very decentralized country. We have, of course, the one centralized government, but most of the public services are provided by local governments. And local governments, especially the direct local governments, cities, towns, and villages, do the most of the work. And the problem is the size and power of these local governments different. It's very different, largely. The largest city, which I live, Yokohama, have more than 3.7 million population. Of course, the government workers is also very big numbers. Why? The smallest village in Japan have the population of 150. No, no other word, 100. And there are only 30 or more laborers in the local government. So Yokohama, already started, and will introduce more AI technologies to increase their efficiency in their business. But the smallest village, Aogashiba, can do anything about that. So this is the problem we are facing. In the central government, the larger local governments, we can do the business. But the problem is inefficiency. Of course, we have 47 different prefectures, more than 1.7 thousand local governments. So we have very different, a very big number of systems. So that's a big task for us.
Sounds like a task for AI to sort out the systems in there. So, you know, clearly in the UK we have a different sort of structure, but even within the same thing, you've highlighted that there seems to be a knowledge gap between sort of, you know, knowing sort of what to ask or what to basically, what is the problem you're trying to solve. But what are the other challenges you feel that you're facing in trying to introduce AI into public services?
So I thought you were going to ask me the other question. So I thought of my answer to that one, which was if we'd that's how I'm going to start. So if we'd spoken sort of 3 months ago, I would have probably had a different answer. But with the release of the opportunity plan and the kind of blueprint for digital government, I do think that there is a kind of positive stance that the UK government is taking around AI as a driver for economic opportunity. And so my answer to that question has changed over the last couple of months. The fundamental challenge, though, remains the same, which is we have a great opportunity plan. We have a great blueprint for digital government. But the challenge always with any technology, and AI is no different, is around how you adopt that technology. And so we still have the same challenge. I think the biggest challenge is the gap between discussions and opportunities and actually the adoption and large-scale implementation of that technology. And that's, I think, the biggest challenge. And then within that, there's lots of issues around scalability, knowledge, training, data. But again, things like the development, hopefully, of a national data library will help address some of those challenges. So in the UK, I think we are making the right moves. We're talking about the right things, but the proof will come when we start kind of adopting and implementing at scale.
And Professor Zetsui, what do you feel sort of hearing that? Do you think sort of need to be done differently from your perspective?
Yeah, I mean, I want to take one step back and sort of have a little sort of thought process about what people think about AI. It's no magic bullet. So we've been doing AI and machine learning for many years. Statistics has been around for many years. So machine learning has been around for at least 40, 50 years. So what is it that we are trying to ask AI to do? Fundamentally, it's an input-output map that says, here's a bunch of things, a set of sensors, a set of inputs, and you've got an output, and it's a function that maps from an input to the output. Now, most cases, the current technologies, the current applications that you see right now are nothing but effectively doing a very good lookup table. Meaning, if these conditions happen, here's the output, let me do that very efficiently. That's the low-hanging fruit. And I think there are many areas in government where that low-hanging fruit can be effectively digitized. As you said, one of the biggest challenges is many of our records are not digitized. So if we do that, then there's a lot of low-hanging fruit to do that. The real interesting challenge comes up when you have ambiguity in the decision-making. So given these set of factors, if there is one way to do that versus another way, how does an AI system or a human or a government decide to pick one or the other? A very simple example, if I want to go there, can I take that route versus this route? And I have very, very different ways of optimizing, or you and me, you and every person in this room may have a very different way of optimizing that decision making. And that's where sort of the values and the optimization functionals and the governance structure, what is important, is energy important, is well-being important, is something else. So that's where all of these human values, things like demographics, things like contextual information becomes very, very important. And that's where we will start seeing slight divergence in policies. And we are sort of getting to the stage where we're already seeing that across different implementations of AI.
So I want to just for a moment shift a little bit. We'll come back to a few more of the challenges, and particularly the governance ones. But springboarding off that, what have been, and particularly needs where you've been working with the UK Public Services and also with Japan, your favorite uses of AI in public services, the stuff that you say, this is bang on, this is actually what it should be used for? Maybe I can start with you, Did you tell me from...
I mean, there's lots.
Okay.
No, go ahead.
You go, please.
I was going to say there's lots. I mean, there's lots of examples, but I think the two that can I have two?
You could have three.
So the two I would call out. One is a piece of work that we did, actually not for a government department, but for an amazing health tech company called Sera Care. So they have domestic care workers that go into people's houses multiple times a day, helping to kind of support our elderly population or our vulnerable population. And we worked with them to embed a solution into the app that the care workers use. They log the every day they would log kind of the changing circumstances of the person that they were looking after. We used kind of the data that they've collected over the last couple of decades and looked at kind of service user needs, looked at kind of like health and social care plans. And basically the objective was to identify risks of hospitalization or risk of infections like UTIs, et cetera, amongst the people that they were looking after. And then recommend potential interventions that the nurses and care workers could take. That tool now is used by care workers who work for that company across the UK. I think it identifies around 80% of potential hospitalizations and has reduced hospitalization by 50%. So that's a health tech company serving vulnerable people that has had an impact on our public services because it's reduced the number of people that end up in hospital. They've been able to look after them in their homes with specific interventions, with information that they already had, but the use of AI has enabled them to kind of identify those people sooner and recommended interventions. So I really like that example because it shows the collaboration between public and private sector. And then another project that we're working on at the moment is, so with the rise of large language models, we all know that everyone talks about the role of AI in schools. We talk about the skills changing and different skills, et cetera, but AI will fundamentally change the way teachers teach. We've done work to support teachers with lesson plans, and we've done work to use AI for exam marking. But we're doing some work with DFE at the moment to build a content store. It's fundamentally a sophisticated store for data. But we've got a very high quality bar for the data that goes into the content store. And the whole purpose is that we curate public, private, third sector data, as well as data from schools, as well as data from pupils in a very, very safe environment that ed tech companies can access to train the products that they develop for teachers. So again, it shows the link between private and public sector. We've done lots of work around AI safety for the last 10 years. We've done lots of work in the R&D space. And so we're embedding all of the lessons around AI safety into the way the content store is curated, the way data is accessed, and also how kind of the products and services that are going to be trained on it are monitored and maintained and looked at and evaluated as well. So those are my two favorite for now.
Perfect. I've got lots of questions about that, but Professor Oya, you also have some exciting examples.
Yeah, but first I need to confess that the Japanese government is on the stage that from last year, they have established the investigating committee on whether and how far we can use AI in the governing process, to which I'm chair. on this problem, I need to say that there must be clear differentiation within the AI technologies, as Professor Setsu indicates. That the first one is very good old-fashioned AI, which is rule-based, just the calculation type of AIs. That's not, I mean, so much good, fine one, and do just that already described, but it is totally explainable. So okay, we can rely on this type of AI in everywhere in the government processes. One clear example of usage in the Japanese government, Japanese local government, is the matching of nationality schools. There are many nationality schools, there are many applicants, and we need to fine-tune the matchings between these two. And it takes weeks of calculation of local government's person. But with introducing AI, that came to be minutes. So it apparently increases efficiency. And in the case of machine learning-based AI, or maybe generative AI, the problem is how far we can use that. I've already introduced the case of tax investigation, and I have some doubt whether I can justify, we can justify this kind of usage, because this machine learning process may include some biases.
Yes.
I imagine from previous examples, maybe some investigators have some prejudice about some certain kind of business, like bars and restaurants, and they hit them before, and they got many tax frauds. So the AI trained by these examples have the same prejudice over that business, and that's not fine. But another, I mean, it seems the fruit, for example, of using generative AI in Japanese government is so-called Project Links of Ministry of Land and Transportation. As you can imagine, we have piles of documents. Japanese government have piles of documents, filed from many transportation companies, or for instance, bus companies have filed many documents on where they have created bus stops, or how their bus will run on the map. Or many drone companies have obligation to file the records of accident when the drones have made it. But the problem is, these documents are mostly paper-based, or in the best way, these situations, Microsoft Word or Excel files, which couldn't be used very hard to use in the other private sectors. So Project Links tried to introduce generative AI to transfer their paper-based or Word Excel-based data into the open data format, very easily used in the AI and machine learning or something like that. So this is just transformation, and don't decide anyone's fate. So we can permit this kind of usage of AI in the government. So this is just an idea, but the current idea of my situation.
It's sort of we'll come back to it, sort of gatekeeping around sort of what the appropriate use is and where that can deliver impact. I'd like to dig a little bit more of that, but before that, I want to come back to.
I mean, I think there were some there's excellent examples of what I would call digitization, and then finding efficiency in some of those processes like logistics. But I'm going to talk a little bit about a very exciting project between UK and Japan. This is the Japan Moonshot project that was initiated about 5 years ago. I was involved with the sort of framing of that whole Moonshot project, and we're involved in 2 Moonshot projects. And Moonshot doesn't mean this is not a space program, but it's about the next generation challenges. And one of the projects that I'm involved in is something that has to do with healthy aging. So it's about trying to understand a little bit like kind of predicting falls and sort of using this kind of data, but using a technology that is developed in Japan. These are what we call sensorized shoes. So shoes that looks like a normal shoe, but actually has what we call a force plate, a portable force plate. It can measure forces when we walk. It can actually measure the distribution of your forces on the foot, and it's got an IMU. So those of you who understand what an IMU is, it basically senses the pose of your foot while it's walking. So it turns out that this kind of data can be a very good precursor, a very good biomarker for some neurodegenerative disease like multiple sclerosis and the Parkinson's. So we've been using data that's been collected from cohort of healthy people and patients who've gone through different scales to then identify the progression of the disease and be able to use that data to then, first of all, do things like drug trials, but also be able to predict and intervene early. So early intervention in this kind of disease. And it's not just Japan and the UK. So we have Spain as a partner, because UK does very good machine learning, and we work with the Anne Rowling Clinic for working with the MS patients. Japan has got excellent technology in terms of kind of miniaturizing these kind of sensory technologies. And Spain, the Cajal Institute in Spain, they specialize in understanding the fundamentals of progression of this neurodegenerative disease. So it's an example of a multilateral cooperation where AI is actually helping us see things that a naked eye would not see, a physician wouldn't be able to see, but add value in terms of intervening ahead of time.
So that's brought me into sort of what, Nidya talked a little bit about when you were talking about the education, is clearly you've got very strong benchmarks as to sort of what the quality of data that can be used. And as you said, where the example from bringing into that digitalization of data has very limited bounds. And you talk about then cross, transnational collaboration. What is it, or what, do you need to see more of that allows, or we might need more of to foster that kind of collaboration between what makes it natural for the UK and Japan, what makes it easier for the UK and Japan to be able to do that, or what would you need? And, when faculty maybe work with external partners, what makes for a good partner, or what are the conditions that you need?
I mean, I can go on that because I've got a very good example. With my Turing hat on, during COVID, there was, I don't know if any of you were aware, there was something called NHS-X that was set up here. And that was the digital wing of the NHS. And one of the things we did was we worked through Turing as a gatekeeper. We worked with DeepMind to basically make, sort of add value to this data, this online data. And that is good and bad. It has become problematic since DeepMind got taken over by Google about monetizing the data that was. I mean, still Turing has the sort of motto that we will do research that is basically AI for social good. It doesn't change the stock price of one single company, basically. But it is really challenging. And so the only way we can do these kind of transnational things is by looking at things we call federated algorithms. So algorithms that cannot trace the data back to the people. It's a much more stronger version of anonymization, so that we can use the benefits of the data without being able to kind of that information flowing back in a sort of negative way to affect people in different ways. So that was an example that we really realized, and we're legislating for now.
Really, my answer doesn't actually have anything to do with AI. I think it's really what makes a good partnership in any field. There's got to be alignment around mission. There's got to be alignment around values, and the federated data concept is absolutely critical to that. And also, not changing the stock price of a single organization. That's a common kind of set of values that you have with the partners that you work with. There's got to be complementary capabilities, so you're not stepping on each other's toes. And so, I mean, a partnership focused on AI is no different to any other partnership. There's just a bunch of complicating factors that you need to think through together. So I think those tenets still stand true. Often we think of AI as this other thing there that's really, really different. But all of the kind of common sense things that we've done for our entire lives still apply. Don't do something silly. Don't put your data somewhere where you don't want people to access it. Think about people you would want to go to the pub with. It's sort of, there's a bunch of common sense things that I think we often forget because we think it's AI and it's very, very different. A lot of that stuff still applies.
What about in Japan?
In Japan, I'm somewhat in the different standpoints than you two. I mean, I'm not engineer and I'm not practitioner. I'm regulator side of things. So on the AI regulation, but there must be some cooperation or harmonization between many parties. And in this problem, I should say Japan and the UK have some special position on that problem. Simply speaking, we are not EU and we are not US, right? As you may already know that EU have introduced very strong AI Act very recently. And part of the act is very easy to understand. Typically, forbidden AI, right? Like, secretly controlling someone is prohibited, something like that. That's okay. But the classification and governance system, especially the omnibus style, everything, every field, everyone should follow this kind of classification and management system, is very doubtful to work. Doubtful whether it could be work or something work. And to this extent, this doubt is, I think I should say, somewhat widely shared between Japan and the UK, US, and also with the UK. But US have another different ideas, especially in the Trump administration, right? Do business, right? The presidential order issued by Biden administration have, dissolved, right? They vanished. So in Trump administration, it is totally unclear whether they could imagine something about AI regulation. So we need to take some position between two, and if possible, to link them into one harmonization process, like G7 Hiroshima Protocol. And we need to talk with China. So this is the position we share, in my opinion.
I think, again, things change very quickly at the moment in the world of AI. But a few months ago, I would say that the network of AI safety institutes was a really kind of interesting idea of how you can foster partnership, because they all had, each of the ACs has its own kind of priority focus area. In the UK, it's all about testing. In Japan, it's about standards. In Singapore, it's about developing new products and services. And the US AC was going to do all of those things, a bit of everything. It's unclear kind of what they will do now, but there was this community of organizations that were across countries, across continents, that were collaborating for safety, for the future of AI, safe AI. But they had their own values, their own areas of focus, but it was very complementary. And so a few months ago, that felt like the way the world was going to progress. I think things feel very different now, and it's a little bit uncertain in terms of kind of the role of all of those ACs and how they will continue to work together. But we've got the Paris Summit coming this month, and so hopefully we'll have kind of more information on that.
Before I turn over to questions, so get your questions ready, everyone, into just so with that in mind, thinking about the unique position and perhaps that we still don't have clarity within the governance regulation standards approach. What is it, do you think, uniquely that then, can Japanese tech, UK sort of AI-enabled tech built for public services have a unique position almost as a tool of influence, as a tool of sort of soft power, and sort of in what area do you think that could have the greatest influence in being able to say we have these tried and tested good standard tools, and here's the areas of public services they could give most impact for other countries that are looking for that, security within a very, very uncertain system? Any of you?
I mean, I can, again, I think you've got a nice complementary panel here, so I won't step on the sort of governance side of things, but I think from a technical point of view, what would potentially work, or what's the unique strengths of the UK-Japan partnership, I would suggest is UK has very strong sort of history of regulations. I mean, a couple of days ago, I was talking to somebody and they were saying even in Spain and Luxembourg or in some other places, they actually teach English law. In Cyprus, I think Cyprus, they teach English law as a way of regulating certain aspects. And it's probably comes from the history of thinking about regulations top down rather than as an afterthought. So I think that is super important. And the other side of things, I think, is Japan is, in my opinion, is a society which is very open to innovation, very much so than many other countries or societies. And there's a long history in my field. There's a long history of using cartoons, mangas, Astro Boy, things like that to sort of say, yes, we are very happy to use innovation and technology to deal with challenges in social care, challenges in aging, challenges in depopulation in certain parts of Japan. So I think that's great. So in a way, I think those, in my opinion, are the two complementary and very, very unique aspects of UK-Japan, which can be then used as a test bed for, obviously nobody will buy something unless it's tested in your own home ground. And I think this is a great place to do that testing.
I would add, I love those ideas. I was thinking about what moonshot we could develop between the UK and Japan, just ripping off your kind of moonshots. But I think the other thing I would add is potentially talent. So we have, because of the demographics of the two countries, we have a talented university educated workforce that could kind of work with Japanese organizations in Japan to help build kind of the future AI development. So let's find some moonshots and then have regulation and some kind of embracing innovation and sort of joint cooperation through talent.
Well, it is just my feeling, but maybe we can share a kind of stance over regulation or ethics, AI ethics. And it's just my opinion, but EU AI Act doesn't believe our conscience, engineers or businessmen's conscience, just governing process and everyone do the same things. And in US, let's do everything you want and let's meet on the code, right? There must be happen very silly things, many fake venture business, AI fraud or something like that. And apart from both ways, as she said, our stance is don't be silly, right? Some years ago, Japanese government issued so-called human-centric AI society principle. And that prouses 3 different basic values, which means human dignity and diversity and inclusion and sustainability, right? Natural, very natural. And we need to respect that and let's confirm and share the ideas and do the business, do the research, but don't be silly. Right? It believes in human conscience, in my opinion. So this neutral position or flexible position is very nice to be shared in the AI regulation, I believe.
Well, I could keep asking questions, but that would not be fair to everyone sitting out there or that may be out on our live stream. So if we have any questions, please, I will say I'd like to get everyone to ask their questions. So if we can keep our questions super short to the panel, that would be fantastic. And if you can wait for the microphone, because that helps us all be heard. So the lady over there with the scarf, you were first, and the gentleman with the blue shirt next to you, as we'll do those two first.
Okay, thank you for your sharing. That's very informative. I would like to ask the Japanese professor about the conscious approach. I'm very interested in that because the AI Act actually based on the human rights approach. And do you think it's not very straightforward, or the conscious approach is provide a better metrics for regulation?
Okay, the key issue is that AI technology is very fastly, rapidly changing and developing. On the already established technologies, human rights approaches or rule-based approach works fine, I believe. And so the prohibition is nice. Okay, this kind of use of AI is very prohibited. It is okay. But the appropriate use of AI could be different in areas and areas, or it could be changed as technology develops. And it seems to me that a human rights-based, rule-based approach of EU is too fixed to apply for this kind of very rapid changing technologies.
Gentleman blue shirt.
This question is for the whole panel. Okay, so we've heard a bunch of exciting examples of where we should use AI in government policy. Where shouldn't we use AI in government policy? For example, suppose green people commit 100 times more crimes than purple people. Then arguably, the evidentiary standards to arrest a green person should be allowed to be 100 times weaker because the prior is 100 times stronger. So should we allow weaker evidentiary standards to arrest green people? And if not, where else shouldn't we apply statistical reasoning or AI in government policy?
Other than taxation as well.
It will be appropriate for me to answer. The final decision about human rights or human obligations shouldn't be directly held by AI. That's my answer. So in the investing committee in the Japanese government, we put three different stages of utilizing AI. The first is finding out. The second is to support. And third is to replace human decision. And in the third case, we need to have total explainability, right? And in the first case, to find out something has happened, no explainability needed. But there must be some book and human went to check that. What is the problem? So if it couldn't explain anything, it will be okay. The problem is support. It is very difficult. As you can see, for instance, what you refer is very similar to the COMPASS system utilized in US. And the Wisconsin Supreme Court said that that system is just supporting the judge's decision. So it will be okay. But in the German court, the same system said to be illegal because it must be replace judge's judgment, right? The problem is our, dependence on AI. Engineers think that the system to be support someone. So someone, for instance, judges or administrators, need to decide by themselves. But we started depending on that technology and forget to do our own business. So in these stages, we must be cautious and very cautious. That is my answer.
Thank you. Did anyone else want to
I mean, the only answer I can contribute to that, in addition to that, is I would say from a sort of technical perspective, there are ways of dealing with these kind of biases. We call it out of sample distribution or heteroscedastic noise. So there's a way, at least sort of mathematically, to sort of address some of the sort of biases in the data. But I fully agree to your point that whatever adjustments you do, there has to finally, it has to come back to explainability, it has to come back to reasoning. And this again will vary depending upon the different cultures, the different value and norms that we follow in different contexts in different countries. And there's a long history. I mean, our generation, we are a product of many years of evolution, different civilizations evolving in very different ways. And I think we need to respect that history before we make decisions that are purely algorithmic.
I think there's an interesting tension here, because there are lots of decisions that I wouldn't want AI to make. But sometimes AI performs better than human beings, but I'm very happy for a human being to make that mistake, make that decision, even though they make suboptimal decisions and they don't have access to all of the data. So I totally agree that, a human has to make the decision. They will be serviced information via AI or whatever technology, and it must be explainable. The way the technology has been developed has to be fair, private, robust. If it needs privacy, the data is private. But it's a really interesting question, because we're perfectly fine for human beings to make those decisions, although human beings are fundamentally flawed as well. But it's not okay for an AI system that might have better access to data, and if it's trained well, is explainable, et cetera, et cetera. I always find it interesting, because I don't want AI to make all of the decisions. I do want a human being to make the decision, but maybe AI helps human beings make better decisions.
I think it goes back to what the regret is, as in what is the consequence of a bad decision or a wrong decision. And there are applications where that regret is not that high, whereas there are some things which are super important, and I think we've got to balance those things out.
Where you can sort of get it to amplify or accelerate the human to the point that they can enable the decision making in whether that's a more efficient way or in sort of an optimized way that helps get things done.
We have a saying, we developed these lessons around implementing AI, and one of them is, I can't remember the way around, augment tasks that require human judgment and automate the ones that don't. And so if there's human judgment required, then you want that decision to be augmented via AI. You don't want it to be automated. But if it's just copying something from one sheet to another, augment that process. And so I think that's a nice way to capture
That's
that.
a great way to think about it. I'm going to take the gentleman in blue, and then I'm going to take a couple of questions from the online audience. So the gentleman over there, do we have a microphone for you?
Thank you. I'm Andrew Rixham. I'm a public health doctor. I was wondering if you think that we might be in danger of holding AI to much higher standards, ethical standards, than we hold humans. In the explainability aspect, many of our explanations are invented narratives when we are challenged. We hallucinate them. In medicine, it takes 15 years on average, sometimes 20 years, to get best accepted practice across the whole system, largely by a process of retirement and death of older doctors. If the AI would bring much greater consistency, and it's often in terms of justice, as a starting point, it's that consistency that we actually want. And if the AI is fed outcomes of purple and green people, and those outcomes, desirable outcomes, are specified in agreement, and that's the bit that the population and humans do. The AI will be, I think, a lot better at achieving that aim. Do you agree?
I do agree, but there is a difference between generative AI and traditional AI. I think if you're just using traditional AI, it's fairly explainable, and the result, depending on the data, is fairly kind of consistent. If you're using generative AI, it's much harder, and so I do agree that we hold AI systems to a higher standard than human beings, but that's okay. That's actually a good thing, because we want to make sure that performance is high and it justifies using technology instead of human beings. But with generative AI, there are different challenges around ensuring you get the same outputs and the same outcomes. So we just need to think about them in different ways.
Yeah, and absolutely. I think we have first-hand experience working with autonomous driving companies and regulators. So we've got a bunch of companies in the UK. Obviously, we've got lots of examples in the US, and that example is not very different, because 99.999% being right still results in 1 or 2 accidents, and humans, you've got human error in lots of driving. So if you look at statistics, you're absolutely right. An autonomously driven or AI managed system may perform statistically better. The question is, when something goes wrong, do we have a causal model that sort of says this is responsible for that, and we guarantee that that will not happen again? It seems to be that in a non-AI solution, there seems to be social norms that drive towards that.
Well, I'm in some lawyer's position, so my viewpoint is always who's in charge, who took the responsibility.
Yep.
And in the case of medicine, already some processes have already automated, but the whole process is under control of the doctor, and he's in charge. If something happens, and some troubles have happened from automation, and the doctor couldn't find it, he's responsible. This is somewhat different situations than autonomous driving. And cars run, and who's in charge, who's on.
But still, I think there is still the same issue of liability.
Yeah.
So is it the sensor? Is it the algorithm? Is it the car manufacturer? There's still similar issues. Yeah.
Yes. So that's the point, guys.
Okay. Emma, what do we have from online?
So we've got 2 questions from online that I'm going to read out. I'm reading these out because they're linked, I think quite interestingly. So we've got someone called Rowan Munson, and he asks, who has the responsibility for ensuring that the benefits of AI are shared appropriately and that AI is sustainable? And then we've got an anonymous submission that asks, some countries won't worry about standards or ethics. So will that mean that countries that do fall behind in realizing benefits, is the wording there? So yeah, thank you.
It's a hard question.
The country didn't care about this.
I mean, fundamentally, it's everyone's responsibility. It's probably the government's responsibility. There's different answers. It's the responsibility of government to progress and provide its citizens with economic opportunities and progress. And so that's why each government is now looking at AI as a driver of opportunity. It's an individual's responsibility to progress. It's a really hard question. I don't really know how to answer it, other than I think it's everyone's responsibility. The challenge around different countries and different standards, we're already seeing that play out, and we will see that play out kind of over the next few years.
Yeah, I mean, the only thing I don't have an answer to that question, but I think there has been some parallels with GM foods, and sort of when there was cloning GM foods, and so very, very different impacts, I would say, potentially. But we've seen some of that play out before in very different areas and different fields. So I think watch the space is all I can say.
Yeah, I think that the only way to persuade other countries to respect the way, certain way of regulations, I mean, for instance, standard-based or rule-based, is to show the outcomes of society. How do you think about this kind of society with this kind of governance system? And you don't think this is better than yours. And so it's everyone's responsibility to do well in certain governance system and get a better outcome to be respected from other countries.
Thank you. I think we have time for one last question in the room because we're already over time. The gentleman in the blue tie.
Question about geopolitics. Access to
Please wait for the
microphone.
sorry. Access to fossil fuels has underpinned almost every geopolitical conflict and alliance for the last 150 years. As we move to this age, where access to compute, access to AGI models, access to the energy that powers them, potentially shape geopolitics for the next 150 years or longer, what should our governments in the UK and Japan be prioritizing to make sure we don't fall behind?
I've got a cheeky answer, which is develop models that use less compute.
Yeah, I mean, I think we don't need to reiterate the fact that data is the new oil. So I think everybody realizes that. And I think it's a question of how do we curate it? How do we use it? How do we sort of ensure that this is done in a way that is sustainable and efficient? So again, I personally think that some of the developments that have happened so far have done it in a very, I wouldn't call it wrong, but in a very brute force way, because there's a lot of people jumped in and saying, if I do this, if I throw in a huge amount of compute, if I just collect more data, it's going to solve the problem. That's not the case, and we've already seen examples of that being the case. So I think there is a lot of scope for making things a lot more leaner, sustainable, and more efficient. And the question is, do we have enough governance in that process to make sure those things come out in the right way in terms of our sort of desired outcomes? And that is really a topic for governments and governance to kind of say, we need to embed some of those values, some of those sort of foolproof security measures, federated aspects at the time of development rather than as an afterthought.
I know I'm telling about some delicate program, but I believe the reason our society could get good outcome to be respected is open innovation and open competition. And we are facing with the society with different principles, society of secrecy or society of autocracy, in which, for instance, even any generative AI won't give any answer to a certain number, like 64. So this is the fundamental competition of societies. And even if we need to fight against the society of secrecy, if we choose secrecy as our fundamental principle, it is the devastation of our free and open innovation. So this is very tough and difficult problem to solve, but don't abandon to cling on this free competition and open innovation must be our principle for the future generation, I believe.
I'm good. As a political scientist on the panel, I need to jump in there and say, absolutely agree. I think if we've talked a lot about very binary sort of visions of the world without talking about a whole areas of the world that are still seeking access to this resource. And the more that we can look at models of shared compute, and thinking about how we create more universal access in a safe way to safely develop on these resources, that perhaps then at the same time you have the effect of minimizing the resource sort of curse and the resource wars that you seek. But sorry to jump in on
No, I was just thinking for the UK to be competitive, I think, again, a lot changes. A few months ago, we were going to have to use a lot of energy, and we needed to create energy hungry, energy intensive data centers to be able to compete. And we have to, otherwise we're not going to be able to compete and we will get left behind. There's an issue of kind of global access. I'm just thinking about the UK's position around AI. There are new models now. There are new ways of doing things. Will those models and approaches mean that we use less energy? Probably not. And so we need to, I think kind of Japan and UK are in a halfway position between the global superpowers when it comes to AI, and we need to have a pragmatic approach. Is it going to be kind of completely green energy fueled and energy efficient? Probably not, but it can't be kind of used following the kind of very energy intensive approaches that have been used by some of the large foundational model providers in the US. So we have to find a pragmatic way forward, but we can't get away from consuming energy to build the data centers that we need to build to stay competitive in the age of AI as a nation.
Well, I am so sorry that I have to be the mean person in the room that draws this incredible conversation to a close, but it has been absolutely fascinating. I know we could all go on and talk for hours. I would like to thank our tremendous panel, and Takahiro and Nij and Chetu. It's been absolutely enlightening and really sort of helping move the conversation forward a little bit. I want to thank everybody that's tuned in on the live stream. Thank you for staying with us. And thank you for everybody in the room that joined us on a Monday night to think a little bit forward about the UK and Japan, and at the bottom of it, the US and China, and the future of AI in public services. So thank you very much.